Pope Pius XII remains a deeply controversial figure in the history of the Holocaust. His papacy coincided with one of the darkest chapters of human history. As millions were systematically murdered by the Nazi regime, the world looked for moral leadership. Did he do enough to help those persecuted by the Nazis? Could he have spoken out more forcefully against the atrocities? This essay will delve into the life and papacy of Pius XII, focusing on his response to the Holocaust. We will examine his early career as a diplomat in Germany, his knowledge of Nazi persecution of Jews, and the Vatican's responses to the unfolding horrors. Finally, we will analyze the complex legacy of Pius XII, considering diverse scholarly interpretations and Jewish perspectives. By examining the historical evidence and engaging with different perspectives, we can gain a deeper understanding of this controversial period and its enduring significance. To understand Pius XII's actions during the Holocaust, it is essential to examine his early life and career. Eugenio Pacelli, as he was known before becoming pope, was born into a family deeply entrenched in the Vatican hierarchy. He rose through the ranks of the church, demonstrating a keen intellect and diplomatic skills. His diplomatic career led him to Germany, where he served as papal nuncio, first in Bavaria and later in Berlin. Pacelli's time in Germany coincided with the tumultuous years following World War I and the rise of extremist ideologies, including Nazism. He witnessed firsthand the growing anti-Semitism and the increasing persecution of Jews in German society. In 1930, Pacelli was appointed Vatican Secretary of State, a position of immense power and influence within the Church. He was involved in negotiating the Reichskonkordat, a controversial agreement between the Vatican and Nazi Germany. Critics argue that he was too willing to appease Hitler and that he failed to grasp the true nature of the Nazi threat. Defenders, on the other hand, maintain that he was a shrewd diplomat who was trying to safeguard the Church's interests in a dangerous time. As the Nazi regime consolidated its power in the 1930s, reports of Jewish persecution began to reach the Vatican. These reports came from various sources, including Catholic clergy working in Germany, Jewish organizations, and foreign diplomats. The Vatican was well aware of the escalating violence and discrimination faced by Jews under Nazi rule. Pope Pius XI, Pacelli's predecessor, issued the encyclical in 1937. This encyclical, written in German, condemned the Nazi ideology and its persecution of the Church. It was a rare instance of a pope publicly criticizing a head of state. Pacelli, as Secretary of State, believed that public condemnations of the Nazi regime would be counterproductive and could even endanger the lives of Catholics living under Nazi rule. He preferred to work behind the scenes, using diplomatic channels to try to alleviate the suffering of Jews and other persecuted groups. Critics argue that it was a form of appeasement that ultimately failed to protect Jews from the Holocaust. Defenders, however, argue that quiet diplomacy was the only realistic option available to the Vatican at the time. Section 4, 1942, a pivotal year of knowledge and silence. The year 1942 marked a turning point in the Holocaust. It was the year that the Nazi regime implemented its final solution, the systematic extermination of European Jewry. In December 1942, a German Jesuit priest named Lothar Koenig sent a letter to the Vatican. Koenig's letter, addressed to the Pope's secretary, detailed the horrific conditions in the Belzec death camp, where Jews were being gassed to death on an industrial scale. This letter, now known as the Koenig letter, provided the Vatican with undeniable proof of the Holocaust. Despite this knowledge, Pope Pius XII did not publicly condemn the Holocaust. His 1942 Christmas address made only oblique references to the suffering of hundreds of thousands who were being persecuted for their nationality or race. Defenders argue that he chose to remain silent out of fear of Nazi reprisals against Catholics. Critics argue that his silence amounted to moral complicity in the Holocaust. Section 5. The Legacy of Pius XII. A complex and contested history. The legacy of Pope Pius XII remains deeply contested. Was he a silent accomplice to genocide or a pragmatic leader who did what he could in impossible circumstances? There is no easy answer to this question. The debate over Pius XII's legacy is further complicated by the Vatican's reluctance to fully open its archives from his papacy. Historians have long sought access to these archives, believing that they hold the key to understanding the Pope's actions during the Holocaust. In recent years, the Vatican has begun to release some of these documents, but many remain inaccessible. Despite the limitations of the historical record, it is clear that Pius XII's legacy is a complex one. He was a man of his time, shaped by the political and religious currents of the 20th century. Ultimately, it is up to each individual to weigh the evidence and reach their own conclusions about Pope Pius XII and his role in the Holocaust.